If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just speak love and watch the smiles come, bring my spirits up. There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to my coverage of the ongoing Kristin Smart case. Today I have some more juicy unsealed documents for you. I've always been extremely curious about the immunity deals that were offered to the Flores families, and at one point they came close to an agreement according to the rumors here in the local area, and I often wonder about Paul's sister, Irma Linda. So these unsealed docs touch on both Irma Linda and immunity offers, and thanks to the Media Coalition and the recent ruling by Judge O'Keefe in Monterey County Court in Salinas, California, we have access to this information related to Irma Linda, Paul's sister, who we rarely hear about. So these unsealed court documents were filed on June 18th, 2021, when her attorney was filing to quash a subpoena for Irma Linda to have her testify in Paul's and Ruben's preliminary hearing, which was scheduled and took place in July of 2021. In January of 2020, San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Detective showed up at Irma Linda's Washington State home requesting an interview while also giving her 2 letters. The first letter urged her cooperation, and the other one offered her immunity for her cooperation. Her attorney said Irma Linda shouldn't have to testify because, quote, she does not have any material testimony to provide during any proceedings in this case, end quote. And he also stated she does not qualify as, quote, a material witness, end quote. A month later, her home was searched by authorities, along with all 4 family homes were actually searched. So her house, Susan's house, Ruben's house, and Paul's house were all served search warrants and searched at the same time. Here are some excerpts. Let's hear from Susan herself.
This past February, there were search warrants at your home on East Branch Street right here, Paul's home in San Pedro, and Irma Linda's house in Washington State.
I'm sorry, but this woman is always out of touch and doesn't seem to realize there's a dead girl here and there's going to be some inconveniences.
They went through the house, at least in my observation, they went through the house, they photographed anything they wanted, got into my file cabinets, got into attorney-client privilege items, that I have with my attorneys, got into everything, every box, every file cabinet. They just had a field day.
Susan's reaction to the Volkswagen being taken completely rubbed me the wrong way. This woman is so clueless and out of touch, it literally blows my mind sometimes.
Kind of thought they were going to come for the Volkswagen because when they came last year at my house, Commander Scott, who was the officer that came, had some pictures on his phone that were sent over to him from this garage. He had a couple of questions, and yeah, the Volkswagen was on there. So it didn't surprise me that they came and took it. I know I'm mad because they took the Volkswagen. That's my little restoration project. People restore old cars all the time. I'm a real I love cars. I love old things, It's like, no, I wanted to do a restoration on that car. They didn't need to take it. They wanted to take it. Now they're going to take, the warrant says they can take it apart. So God knows what it'll look like, But it's private. They're coming and they're taking your stuff. They're taking your stuff at will for any reason. Having a search warrant done, and you think we'd be used to it, is violating. It's like, they're in your house. They're in your drawers. They're in, they're scattering stuff.
Here she goes again. Now she's whining that the cops have a truck that was stolen from them. Does she not realize someone was murdered here?
They supposedly have 2 other trucks. If they have what used to be our family's truck, the Ranger was a trade-in, and so it is not technically ours. The Nissan pickup was a stolen vehicle, which was our family vehicle. We gave it to Paul at some point, changed ownership. It was stolen from him, and therefore it is his vehicle. He was never paid off from an insurance company, and if they have that vehicle, it is technically his vehicle. They have a stolen vehicle.
Here's more from Susan, including her opinions on law enforcement and how she and her family are the victims somehow, not the Smart family or Kristin.
This is the first interview I've ever done in my life. I don't necessarily think they're doing their jobs, but I guess they are. I don't know how to put it. He's been the scapegoat.
I know you said earlier that you were thinking about taking legal action, possibly against the sheriff's office or the Smart family. Further, do you still?
I have a civil suit against Mr. and Mrs. Smart for their involvement with their henchmen.
As we've been learning, Irma Linda has been trying to distance herself from this murder for years.
I mean, my daughter moved to Europe because she couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't. She was a new wife, and she had to leave her country. And they still followed her, and they still talked about her, and they still knew where she was. What? It's outrageous. It's just outrageous. Time and time again, they just come after you, and they do it. They go after my children. They go after Paul. They go after my daughter. They go after her husband. What are they going to do? Go after my grandchildren next? They're little people. We may, unfortunately, find ourselves, having to redefend in the court of law. I don't know if we're going to wind up in a court of law. I don't like this case being tried by the media. This is not where the case should be, in the media. Public opinion deciding, these people are guilty.
Well, it looks like Susan's getting what she wanted. Paul and her ex-husband Reuben are both on trial related to Kristin's murder.
I don't have any reason to believe that anybody in our family has any answers to where she is or what happened to her in the final.
What the heck? Is it just me, or what does she mean, quote unquote, in the final?
Everybody on earth has a cross to bear. I guess this is ours.
I just can't with her. She bothers me so much. One of these days I'm going to do the episode dedicated to Susan. This is supposed to be about Irma Linda, but there's links, as you can see. In these letters, Irma Linda was accused of maybe committing the following crimes. And that's interesting. I've never quite heard that. Maybe committing the following crimes. Those crimes are listed in the letter as accessory after the fact, destruction of evidence, and mishandling human remains. Wow, that's the one that kind of gets me. Are these accusations just scare tactics, or are they actually based on some evidence? Irma Linda denies being a witness to any crime, nor did she hear the defendants speak to their crimes, according to her. And Irma Linda never testified in the preliminary hearing, which is quite interesting. And so far in this trial that's going on, we're in the month of August 2022. The murder trials are going on, and so far she has not testified there either. So moving back to the detective from the SLO County Sheriff's Department, Detective Clint Cole, which I know we'll be hearing from him, I'm sure. He sent Ermelinda this letter. He explained he'd been working Kristin's case for 2 years and didn't bother her previously, quote, because it was obvious to me that former detectives harassed your family in the past, and I do not operate that way, end quote. He stated he tried to keep an open mind and assumed Paul Flores was not involved in Kristin's disappearance. He goes on to say, I now know for sure he is, and Kristin is dead, and so do you. That's pretty harsh and very direct, I'd say. Detective Cole states, there have been drastic advances in DNA technology, and that evidence has been re-examined, and vehicles belonging to her and her family have been forensically searched. And we talked about already the trucks that were seized. One was supposedly sold, so it no longer belonged to them, and one was stolen, so they're trying to act like they didn't know anything about it. And then, of course, Susan's beloved Volkswagen, which you already heard the details about from her own mouth. What do you guys think about the situation, and how do you like Susan as a person so far? Let's continue on with the letter from Cole. And I just love this letter that he sent Ermelinda. It's still Deputy Cole. It was short and sweet, but it was very telling to me. And seems like they're definitely using scare tactics. The letter starts with, you did not ask for this to happen. Paul sucked you in to his mistake. He goes on to tell Ermelinda how he was speaking to her ex-husband, Brett MacArthur, in Oklahoma, and now we want to talk to you, he said to Ermelinda. Side note, I hope we hear from Brett, her ex-husband. I've always wondered his take on it all, and especially since they're divorced now, and they lived right within a mile of Paul when this all happened, and some people think that Paul went over there and got assistance from them. People think that he called his dad and got help from dad, or maybe a combination of sister Brett and dad. So we'll see what continues to come out in the court. Cole mentions Paul's previous attorney, Mel, having many plea agreement talks with the district attorney, confirming for Cole that Paul knows what happened to Kristin without a doubt, and he knows where her body is. Paul's own words saying so prove it. He offers to show Ermelinda a video with Paul admitting he knows what happened to Kristin. Man, I wish I could see that video. I've only seen him pleading the fifth over and over and over. I think it's a total of like 27 times that he pleads the fifth there. Well, I went down the rabbit hole regarding Melvin De Lamont Jr., who was, Paul's former attorney. So there's hardly any pictures of him, and it shows that his office in San Luis Obispo is closed as of the information I could get online, August 22nd of 2022. That's what it's reflecting there. He did go to law school in Davis, California, and started practicing law in 1973. And in 2007, it shows his license became inactive. It also shows license status not eligible to practice law. As of January 1st of 2007 is when the inactive status was listed. And then on July 1st of 2009, it shows he was not eligible. It shows license suspended, failed to pay fees. There's got to be a story behind all this. Or could it be as simple as he retired? I have no idea. He has a bad attitude, though. Some of you probably recall how agitated and discourteous he was to Mr. Murphy at the deposition. I realize some of you have never even seen Paul in action. Well, here he is in 1997, not long after he murdered Kristin. And he's here with his grumpy attorney, Melvin De Lamont. His former attorney.
Ask the questions or we'll leave.
All right, I'm going to make my record here. I've been advised that he's not going to answer the questions, so let's start asking the questions. Did you report your '85 Nissan truck stolen in San Diego recently?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
In May of '96, were you a student at Cal Poly? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Employment positions that you have held since you started high school. On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Are you presently employed? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Where do you presently reside? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Where did you attend high school? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What is the name of your father? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What is your mother's name? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What is your sister's name? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Does your mother have a sister?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Prior to moving to the Arroyo Grande area, where did you reside? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Were you employed at Garland's in Grover Beach at any time in your life? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Have you ever been employed at a Union 76 station in the San Luis Obispo County area? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What was the name of your supervisor at Garland's? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. What were the nature of your job duties at Garland's? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Did you cook hamburgers at Garland's? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. How old are you? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. In what year did you cease being a student at Cal Poly? On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Could you provide me with the names of the persons with whom you have discussed the Kristin Smart case?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Were you arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol in 1996?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Did you attend a party at or near the Cal Poly campus in May of 1996?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Can you provide me with the names of persons who were present at the party in May of 1996, the party that immediately preceded the disappearance of Kristin Smart?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
I think that I have made a sufficient record that the witness is not going to answer any questions in connection with anything other than his name. I have been advised by Mr. Delamotte at the start of the deposition that the witness would not be answering any questions other than his name. The witness, on advice of counsel, is refusing to answer any and all questions. I have approximately 1,000 additional questions, but having had no success in finding out whether or not he cooked hamburgers at Garland's, I'm going to cease the questioning. I believe I've made a sufficient record to go to a court and seek appropriate relief. I want the record clear that I will be seeking sanctions from Mr. Delamotte, from his law firm, and from Mr. Flores as a result of what I believe to be a bad faith presentation of this witness and a wrongful assertion of the Fifth Amendment.
I'd love to know if Mr. Murphy got his sanctions here. If you have time, you should check out the full deposition. You'd be shocked at how that lawyer behaved. Cole says it could have been an accident. Cole told Irma Linda he believed she knew what happened and had some involvement, quote, by being a good sister, end quote. Cole offers Irma Linda full immunity for telling the truth about what she knows. He gets very direct here and says, quote, "Things will be used against you," end quote. Cole says Paul will soon be put in a position of needing to tell law enforcement his story, and the case will be solved soon. Cole also said that Irma Linda can end the nightmare and move on with her life. Until Kristin is found, the case will never go away, and your family will never have any peace. There will always be an open, active investigation. Here's another letter from the district attorney to Irma Linda with similar wording. This document didn't reveal if she accepted immunity or provided info. It's all so interesting. Holy cow, I just found out over 3,000 pages of documents have been released. So far, thanks to the Media Coalition motion's success, the release includes many court filings, evidence, and various motions. And I look forward to uncovering more of what's been hidden. So many of us are amazed that there aren't pictures of Irma Linda, except for the handful of childhood photos. And I'm pretty sure those are online courtesy of Chris Lambert, or we wouldn't even have those. My understanding is Chris Lambert acquired the photos while spending time in Southern California interviewing former acquaintances, former classmates and families, and so on in the area. They look like yearbook-type photographs to me. I agree with this comment at the bottom where it says, quote, "One can only imagine the horrors she grew up with," end quote. The Flores family had to leave Torrance, California when Paul was in middle school after he so violently assaulted a classmate to the point of a 5-day hospitalization. My video with the basketball court that Paul did not get his black eye has more details on that. You can find it on the playlist. Folks didn't think too kindly of that family after that, and I wonder how Irma Linda felt about it all. It must have been traumatic for her. We know how Reuben and Susan felt. Denial, no therapy for Paul. They paid out the settlement from the lawsuit and ran away. That's where Paul learned that. I've seriously lost track of how many times Paul has lied, ran away, and denied. I'm going to take an ever slight detour only because some of the stuff I found in research is interesting enough to repeat. So, the comment from Poop here claims that Susan told a coworker that Reuben was violently abusive. And many of us already know about Susan's bruised face, claiming she tripped over a footstool inside a closet years and years ago when they were still married. Poop goes next level with their comment here, accusing Reuben of some very dark stuff. I'm not going to repeat it, but you can see it here. Ginger thinks Irma Linda was not involved. And Outlandish thinks Irma Linda was possibly forced. All the perspectives are very interesting. Others' perspectives are thought-provoking and remind me how diverse the opinions are regarding the Flores family. Yet, never have I heard anyone stand up and insist how great they are. Actually, I take it back. No one except their attorneys have presented them as good people. The attorneys claim they're victimized by lynch mobs, in essence. Here's a slide with a warrant that was served on Irma Linda's Washington home in East Kenmore. The warrant was served at 7 a.m., and neither King County or SLO County law enforcement on scene provided any other details. They said the law precluded them from disclosing anything regarding an active investigation. Here are some stats on Irma Linda, not to include current stats of 2022. I'm not going to post anything current here. It could really put people in danger. She now goes by Irma Linda Marie Thomas, and I believe she's still married to her second husband, Chris Thomas. As far as I know, I've seen that she has 2 ex-husbands, but I'm not sure if they're divorced or not. I'm not going to dig for that because it's really not that important to me. Irma Linda has many phone numbers listed for her. Here's some of them. I'm not including the most recent ones, of course. These are all outdated. We also see some of her AKAs here. previous addresses. And I wonder if she briefly returned to California or there's another explanation for the odd 2017 address in Valencia. In 1993, it still shows her at 710 White Court, which was Kristin's temporary burial site. In 1997, she moved back to Torrance with Paul right after he was kicked out of Cal Poly, and they lived in Torrance before they moved to Arroyo Grande, if you recall. Paul was failing out of school in his freshman year at Cal Poly. They headed south soon after Kristin disappeared, never to be seen again. Meaning Kristin was never to be seen again, unfortunately. Not the case with Paul. In 1998, she moved to Orange, and I matched some of the addresses up with Paul, and the ex-husband of Ermelinda also resided with them in Los Angeles for quite a while. 2004 was Lawndale in Los Angeles County, and so on. Here are some of Ermelinda's homes she's lived in over the years, starting with 1997, where she lived in Torrance, California with Paul. By 1998, she was in Orange, California, and moving on in 2004 to Lawndale, California. By 2006, she was now in Washington State, living in Bothell, Washington, in this apartment complex. In 2009, she was still in Washington, living in the Mill Creek area. And by 2014, she was back in the Bothell, Washington area, in this beautiful house here. In 2017, this Constellation Way address, located in Valencia, California, as I previously noted, it stood out to me. This one's either a mistake or a business somehow connected to Irma Linda. She'd already been in Washington State for years by then. This address actually creates more questions than answers. Oh well, it's not super important anyway. Just more of my curiosity. As of 2020, she's still in Washington State. I'm not going to disclose her exact current residence. Here are more of Irma Linda's relatives. There's Paul, aka Chester the Molester, and all the other lovely nicknames they've chosen for him. There are the other monsters, Susan and Reuben. I know Brett, her ex, is indeed a 5th grade science teacher who moved all the way to Tulsa, Oklahoma. In 1996, Irma Linda lived 0.97 miles from Cal Poly on Olive Street, at 1186 Olive Street to be precise. She lived there with her husband, at the time Brett, and he told investigators that Paul, quote, would walk over all the time and had access to their vehicles, end quote. Ermelinda claims she worked every day of Memorial Weekend from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and she didn't know where her ex-husband was while she was working. Brett said Paul would borrow their truck sometimes, and Brett says he helped Paul move out of his dorm shortly after Kristin disappeared. Ermelinda is very elusive, and others agree. I'll share some of my findings here and other posts regarding Ermelinda. People want to know what's she up to. What's her ex-husband Brett up to? And yes, he is still a teacher in Oklahoma as far as I know. Ermelinda is never pictured. My thoughts are I would separate myself from him too. From the whole family, actually. Paul actually lived with Ermelinda in Lawndale in Southern California, as I mentioned, but eventually she moved 2 states away to Washington. Doverit says Ermelinda had 2 decades to end the Smart's torment. Doverit has zero sympathy for Ermelinda or anyone else in her, quote, scumbag family, end quote. I almost hate to confess that I don't have the same visceral feelings for Ermelinda as I do for the rest of the family. Here's my order on the loathing scale. Of course, Paul is first, then Susan, because she's the boss, then Reuben. I feel like she dictated a lot of what went on here. And then Ermelinda's the bottom of my list. Who knows how that order may change. As this trial continues, I'm hearing that Ermelinda may have been more involved, or at least more knowledgeable than I ever expected. We'll see what continues to be revealed in the court. This comment from Sophia reminds me how Ermelinda left the country to stay abroad to get away from the scrutiny, and of course currently lives in Washington, according to Chris Lambert. Ermelinda's exes were both interviewed by law enforcement. Brett and Paul remained close after the divorce. Also, according to Chris Lambert, he says, We don't know yet if any of them were cooperative, and he also doubts they'll talk. I'm expecting them all to plead the fifth, just like Paul did. And this slide reminds me of how Paul was first arrested for weapons charges, and we all knew that movement in the case most likely meant bigger things were to come. We were spot on with that. Paul was charged as a felon in possession of a firearm, and that got the ball rolling. Susan, of course, says her family doesn't have any answers to where Kristin is or what happened to her. She says it's not up for discussion. As far as she's considered, this should have been over a long time ago. That's probably the only thing that the Smart and Flores families agree on. Are you ready for this? Susan's writing a book! She admitted it in that interview, the first and one and only interview she did when the search warrants were served. She said she has to wait to finish the book since there's no ending yet. I have a feeling she's not going to like the ending very much. For many of us, until Kristin is found, there is no ending. But putting Paul away for life and Reuben away for the maximum of the 3 years he's facing is definitely a huge step towards justice. I bet Susan loved being able to hide behind her mask for her first ever interview. I mean, I can relate. We're masked in our channel picture for our own protection, of course, not because our relative raped and killed somebody. A little bit of a difference there. I already have content ready for my Susan episode. One day I'll hopefully get the courage to put it together and post it. I have to admit, she's scary.
You know what? None of it's going to make up 25 years. None of it's going to, no amount of money in this world, no litigation, no, is going to give back us 25 years of our lives, of the changes they made for us. If they believed that our son had some responsibility, they didn't have to gang up on us.
I'm a very empathetic person, and hearing her does nothing for me. I reserve all of my empathy for Kristin's family and loved ones.
I don't know if we'll wind up in a court of law. It's okay with me, you know.
No problem, Susan. We're all happy to oblige you on that. Hope you're having fun in court. There's going to be more uncovered episodes to come. When there's court breaks, I'll try to put some of these other things together so we can keep learning about the case and we can keep everything moving along. As always, justice for Kristin.
If I can't keep my head held high enough, I'll just be love and watch the smiles come.
Thanks for watching.
Bring my spirits up.
Don't forget to stop and smell the flowers.
There's some shit I like to fix, but I still know that I'm blessed.